Well, joining us now is the Reverend Franklin Graham, who leads the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association and Samaritan's Purse. Reverend Graham, thanks for being with us all the way from Boone, North Carolina.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be with you.
Well, have you heard from the White House or President Trump himself? Are they aware of what's happening this Sunday?
Yes, they are aware and appreciative of the prayers. Every time I've been with the president, he's always been appreciative of anybody that prays for him.
Reverend Graham, can you tell us what this day of prayer will look like, and can folks join you online?
Yes, they can. I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live prayer early in the morning. But this is not trying to have everybody at one time. It's just that for churches, for pastors to lead their congregations in a prayer. And this is not a political endorsement. It's just simply praying for the president. The Bible instructs us to pray for those that are in authority. And I think if people would just pray for our president, pray for this nation, that God will hear those prayers and answer those prayers. We need to pray for not just the president, but for his family, for Melania and for Barron. How difficult all of this has been. 2 years of investigation and night after night, accusations after accusation after accusation. And now for the report to come out that there was no collusion, and now they're talking about impeachment. All this just rips our country apart and rips our presidency apart. The president is the president. He won the election. And it's been very difficult for his enemies to accept that. But my prayer is that people tomorrow, or on Sunday, will pray that on June the 2nd, just pray for the president, that God will give him strength, give him wisdom as he leads our nation.
In a statement, Reverend, you say that God can soften hearts and change minds. Whose hearts and minds are you asking God to touch here?
Well, it's our whole nation. Our nation has a huge problem. And the fighting in Washington is just incredible. That it didn't used to be that way. And it's not just the fighting, but it's become hatred. And my prayer is that God can soften the hearts of all the politicians so that he can bring them together, that they'll work together for the better of all Americans. But the focus tomorrow, or excuse me, on Sunday is just to pray for the president, that God would strengthen him, that he would sense the prayers of millions of people behind him, and that he would be faithful to carry out the duties that he was elected to do, and that he will seek God's face for every decision that he makes.
Reverend Graham, I think it's important to note, in 2012, you issued a call for pastors to pray for then-President Obama daily, saying prayer must never be partisan. Yet you've also been a vigorous and faithful defender of President Trump more than any other president. How do you avoid the perception that's out there? Some have already said that this is weaponizing prayer and political evangelism. How do you avoid the perception that you're not advocating for Mr. Trump?
Well, first of all, prayer is a weapon. We could go straight to the throne of grace. We can go directly into God's presence, and God hears prayer and answers prayer. But I prayed for President Obama on all 50 state capitol steps. We went across the country. We prayed for our leaders, and he was the president of our nation at that time, and I prayed for him. And for us to pray for the president this one day, I know people are going to criticize you. You can't do anything without somebody being critical. And I just, I don't pay any attention to these critics. I'm just going to do what I feel God calling me to do, and that's to pray for our president. He wants us to pray for him, and that's what I'm going to do. And I hope millions of others across this country and around the world will join me, because if the president makes a good decision, it's good for all of us. If he makes a bad decision, it's going to affect all of us. So by prayer, God hears prayer, he answers prayer, and God appreciates prayer. He likes it when his children talk to him.
Reverend, just a few seconds left here, but what's been the response so far? And can you measure how this special day of prayer, can you measure how effective it'll be?
I have no clue, Jen, I really don't. All I know is God calls us to pray, and I felt in my heart, I was in Manchester, New Hampshire, speaking, preaching, and just God laid it on my heart that we ought to do this Sunday. So I'm just trying to respond to a call that I believe God has given me on this. I want to be obedient to him. We know God will hear the prayer of one righteous person, and if two join me, or three, or four, or 100, or whatever, I believe God will hear those prayers.
Now, Reverend Franklin Graham, thank you so much for being with us. And we know many, many people will be with you this weekend to pray.
Thank you, Jennifer. God bless.